Don't rush into the expedition. There's so much you can do to help yourself before starting to play, so stick with me and you'll know. Every time an expedition comes out, the big creators like Beeblebum, Captain Steve, and Jason produce videos about the expedition, so you can definitely wait for those, watch their guides, and tweak the recommendations from this video accordingly. You can also watch videos of others playing the expedition, pause on the milestone pages, and plan ahead by what you see you will need to accomplish. GoodGuysFree here, and we'll see how to prepare for an expedition when starting from an existing save file, what tech and what cargo you should take. So, should you start a new save for the expedition or start the expedition from the Space Anomalies Expedition Terminus? That's really up to you. If you're starting a new save for the expedition, good luck. I love starting fresh too. Most expeditions let you change your difficulty settings, but should you? The Leviathan expedition was fixed to survival mode, for example. Anyway, we have 8 slots for tech and 24 slots for cargo. So let's be smart about it and think. What always hinders us, slows us down when we start an expedition? There are always 2 stages in an expedition, before you can summon the space anomaly and after. You need the anomaly to access the expedition terminal and get the supplies. In a drift that ended in July 2024, this happened after your first warp to another system. But there's something else you can do with the expedition terminal at the space anomaly before starting, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Until you can summon the anomaly, it is not very different than starting a new game. A proper guide to preparing for this is beyond the scope of this video, but I will give the highlights and you can pause and write down if you like. Our priorities should be oxygen and sodium to recharge the life support and hazard protection. Use your scanner to find oxygen and sodium plants. All hazardous flora on the surface give oxygen, but if you find a cave, you're safe from storms, and the hazardous flora in caves give oxygen and sodium. Remember, your scanner shows subterranean relics and humming sacks. Both are in caves, so you can use the terrain manipulator to dig down and reach the cave as well. You can also use your photo mode to find caves. When you have enough oxygen and sodium, stop for a second and reorder your tech in the suit and Multitool to gain adjacency bonuses. Prioritize jetpack movement at first and your mining beam, and then get to the anomaly fast. When you eventually reach the expedition terminal during the expedition that you started from an existing save file, you see this, Clone Multitool. We can use this to our advantage, but it means we need to plan ahead. We need to make sure we have the correct multitool selected when we start the expedition, as this will be the multitool we will be offered to clone. And it will cost some 9,000 nanites. But first, let's see what we should do if we're not going to clone a multitool. Okay, we're at the expedition terminal before the expedition starts. What do we put here? We need to think about tech and cargo separately. Let's start with tech. We only have 8 slots, and when we get to receive the content, we will already have survived long enough to reach our ship, repair it, fly up to space, and summon the anomaly. In a drift, and also in other expeditions, there were some limitations on whether you could collect previous expedition rewards or Twitch rewards in the anomaly during the expedition. Of course, if you don't know, then assume you cannot. If you cannot, I recommend to dedicate 2 tech slots for the ship, 3 for the suit, and 3 for the multitool. The thing that hinders us the most is if you constantly need to recharge your launch thrusters and the hyperdrive jump distance. Therefore, my choice for the ship is an S-Class hyperdrive upgrade and an S-Class launch thruster upgrade. It is best if you install them in a ship to see what benefits they give beforehand. Then simply use the control to pack it up and store the tech in your suit, so you can place it in the expedition terminal. For the suit, we dedicate 3 slots. I would say that a Mark II personal refiner is an excellent choice. Build it, store it in your suit, and then place in the expedition terminal. It gives you the ability to refine lots of things while still exploring. The other 2 slots I will use for an S-Class movement upgrade, preferably one that increases sprint distance, and an S-Class life support upgrade, one that gives 33% core health. This will increase your survivability. For the multitool, we want to mine faster and we want to gain units quickly. Therefore, I recommend using an S-Class scanner upgrade, one that gives lots of reward percentages on all 3 types, minerals, flora, and fauna. Use the second slot for an S-Class mining beam upgrade. Try to find one that provides a bonus in the amount of resources mined. The third slot is a tough one. You probably want to dedicate this to some weapon upgrade, but if you don't know which weapon you are going to have, it's hard to pick. My choice? The Paralysis Mortar. And remember to dedicate some cargo slot to Unstable Plasma. But wait, what if we do have a multitool to Multiclone, or we can collect Twitch or Expedition rewards at the Space Anomaly. Well, in either case, we can forego modules for the Multitool from the tech slots and use 4 and 4 for the suit and ship, or even 5 and 3 suit and ship. For the ship, add another hyperdrive range upgrade and decide what you want to add for the pulse drive or weapon systems. For the suit, this gives you the ability to add an underwater module, hazmat gauntlet, and maybe another movement module. Now, if you know you can collect Expedition or Twitch rewards, then visit the Quicksilver Merchant in the Space Anomaly and go over the rewards you have. Plan ahead which multitool and which ship you would take. One of the easier ways to make units and nanites, if the Expedition lets you collect these rewards, is to grab a multitool, then go to scrap it. Grab another, scrap it, until the only one left is the one you want to use. A similar trick can be done with ships, but it requires you to fly out of the anomaly, go to the space station and scrap the ship. Then use whatever ship spawns instead to fly back to the anomaly. If you do this, you'd better summon the anomaly close to the station. Okay, let's talk about cargo slots. Again, don't rush it. Think and plan. If you followed the advice to this point in the video, you probably realized that by the time you're getting the supplies, you're already through some part of the expedition milestones. Now would be a great time to pause again, open the expedition milestones and read them. Find the low-hanging fruit. For example, in Adrift, one milestone was to look at the sky from a planet and stay still for 60 seconds. Read the milestones ahead and think, what can you complete quickly and easily, and what is going to require things you don't yet have? Okay, cargo slots. So you have some basic supplies, and there are 24 slots for cargo. What should we prioritize? That depends on the expedition, and the number of variations and possibilities for what might be needed is nearly endless. Still, some things are probably always going to be useful. Oxygen is always useful. If you can prepare a stack of 9,999 oxygen, that will go a long way. Now remember that oxygen can be refined into carbon, so don't rush to add carbon. Next, we should probably add sodium. And again, don't rush to add sodium nitrate. It can be refined. So dedicate at least one slot, 9,999 stack, for oxygen and one for sodium. Of course, if you're left with spare slots, sure, refine or gather other resources ahead of time. But what slows us down? Exploration takes time because of the suit, which starts with basic jetpack, because of the ship we get, which usually starts as a basic C-class ship, and the lack of exocraft. To upgrade what we have, we need the blueprints and we need construction materials. To get the blueprints, we usually need nanites, so we need a means to obtain nanites. There are multiple different things you can put in the cargo slots that will help you get nanites, but which is best? Now, this is a hard choice between the short refine time for things like Hadal cores or larval cores with their small stack sizes and the slower options of tainted metal or runaway mold. The Hadal and larval cores have a stack size of 10, producing 500 nanites in mere seconds, and that's barely enough for one S-class upgrade module. Runaway Mold and Tainted Metal have a stack size of 9,999. Runaway Mold refines 5 to 1, giving you 1,999 nanites, which is great. Tainted Metal refines 1 to 2, producing 19,998 nanites, and is much faster per nanite refined. So this is the best option if you have it. If you're wondering where to get Tainted Metal, it's on Derelict Freighters. See my video on your screen. Dedicate at least one slot for 9,999 Tainted Metal if you have it, or 4 slots for Runaway Mold. So we took care of the hardcore survival with oxygen and sodium and added some slots for materials that can be refined into nanites. But what about construction materials? Well, Adrift was an interesting expedition where you had limited ability to purchase materials, but usually this is not the case. However, when you got that blueprint for the personal refiner or the hazmat gauntlet or the blaze javelin and its upgrade module, you need to build them. Plan ahead, see what materials you will need, and gather them. It is almost certain you will need wiring looms. They normally cost about 25,000 units apiece, and their stack size is 40. I recommend you dedicate at least 1 or 2 slots for full stacks of wiring looms. The next super useful thing to have is emerald. A full stack of emerald can refine into 15,000 chromatic metal. Not that you need that much, but chromatic metal is super useful, and it can be used in a medium refiner or a personal refiner Mark II to increase your stores of cadmium, indium, and, well, emerald for that matter. Each one of cadmium, emerald, and indium refined with chromatic metal into 2 units. Plus, there are many technology items that require chromatic metals to craft, and a base computer, needless to say. So we should dedicate at least 1 slot to emerald. Let's go back to mobility. Our ship typically uses tritium or pyrite to recharge the pulse engine, unless we get a sentinel interceptor, which seems unlikely. There are more than 30 crafting items that require tritium, and many people hate mining asteroids for tritium. I made a YouTube short about this. It's a bit out of date, as it talks about the old space stations, but still good. Link in the description. By now, we dedicated 1 slot for oxygen and 1 for sodium. We set aside 1 to 4 slots for tainted metal or runaway mold. We added 1 to 2 slots of wiring looms and 1 slot for emerald. Another slot dedicated for tritium. This sums up to between 6 and 10 slots, leaving at least 14 cargo slots. So let's consider units. If you happen to have a stasis device, put 1 in the cargo slot so you can sell it for millions of units. Slightly less lucrative options are semiconductors or heat capacitors. If none of that is available, perhaps you have access to other items that have high value. Feel free to dedicate 2 to 4 slots for each such item. This brings us to between 8 and 14 slots used. I would dedicate a slot of each ammonia, dioxide, uranium, and phosphorus. They are used to recharge the various hazard protection modules for toxicity, cold, radiation, and heat. This brings us to 12 to 18 slots, leaving between 6 and 12 slots of cargo. Now, the other things that are often hard to get by, at least earlier in the expedition, are microprocessors, hydraulic wiring, and similar items. Since we recommended the pyrolysis mortar, dedicate a slot to unstable plasma. I would recommend an echolocator, radiant shards, and a crystallized heart if you want to go and find a sentinel interceptor, of course. At this point, feel free to add whatever you feel is right for you, of course. Now remember, if you packed up any tech from your normal save and placed it in the expedition terminal, you must remember to pack it up before you go to finish the expedition at the expedition terminal. So, you placed everything in the expedition terminal. Stop, exit from the menu, and verify that the multi-tool you have equipped is the one you want to be able to clone. That's it. You're ready to start, so good luck. I hope you found this useful. If so, please remember to like and consider subscribing. See you in the next video.